Hello everyone, Juxtaposition here. Today's video will be entitled CBS Moon Landing Hoax. Now, I've been sort of putting off this video for 4 years now. This is just going to be a brief analysis expose of the Columbia Broadcasting System, which was hosted by none other than the greatest fraud of all time, the most dishonest voice in American history, Walter Cronkite. Walter Cronkite was the former UPI chill for military intelligence and joined CBS and William Paley in Switzerland whilst they promoted propaganda and poppycock mendacities for CBS and UPI broadcasting during World War II. That's right. Isn't that interesting that people like Wild Bill Donovan, William Paley, the chairman of the board of CBS, Columbia Broadcasting System, the evil eye, right? The evil eye. If you shoot out Jack Kennedy's right eye, what do you got left? You got the left eye of Horus, known as the evil eye. You can't miss it. It's on the back side of your $1 bill at the tippy top of the pyramid. And didn't Jack Kennedy's shooters snipe him from the tippy top of the pyramid over Main Street? You know, where Elm Street, Commerce Street, and Main Street all come together at the railroad trestle to form the tippy top, the level 33, the highest level of obedience within the military chain of command, in sight, directly ahead of the obelisk positioned there in George Dealey Plaza. George Dealey Plaza is, of course, named after George Dealey, who was the owner of the Dallas Morning News, 30 Scottish Rites Templar himself, which is headquartered in Geneva, Switzerland. So we have so many things going on here. Walter Cronkite disgraced himself along with Dan Ratherby Bowling, who disgraced himself on that fateful day, November 22nd, 1963. It became crystal clear to me that CBS television, CBS News was a fraud, and that Walter Cronkite was a fraud, and that Dan Ratherby Bowling was a fraud. Okay? We knew that in 1963. Then 5 years later, all right, on July 20th, 1969, we had the fake moon landing, which featured West Point Academy graduate Buzz Aldrin and United States Navy and Purdue graduate Neil Armstrong, who will forever his name be blended with Lance Gunderson Farmstrong, the steroid Nike sponsored sneaker salesman Lance Farmstrong, who won 7 Tour de France's only to have them deleted, and so now presently has 0 Tour titles. Tour de France will begin in 3 weeks, so stay tuned. All right. So anyway, I wanted to tell you that Columbia Broadcasting System was the main television delivery platform for your fake moon landing. Now, to set the stage, you should know there were a lot of things going on in 1969. I don't know where you are. I was extremely busy. The reason why I think it's important to go back to the 60s and 70s and look at some of these COINTELPRO counterintelligence social events, these what you call pillars or milestones, foundational lies, foundational mendacities, is to then take what we learn today from looking and examining the 1960s and 70s and then applying it to the here and now in the year 2020s, where we had an even bigger hoax, the COVID pandemic, which does far exceed the moon landing hoax. But you see, in order to bald-faced lie to the public, in order to do that, you have to gradually test out how stupid people are. And I think we know that by today, 2026, where the vast majority of people now are vaccinated, aluminum chalk and Paul Muir's messages, memes, and memos, and the polluted food and water and soils that we have, that people are really out to lunch. They have senile dementia. They have attention deficit disorder. There's no doubt. Cell phone abuse, use and abuse is at an all-time high. There was no such thing as cell phones back when Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin lied right to your face through the microphones of Walter Cronkite. Isn't it hilarious that they had perfect radio contact with um, with television presenters, and yet couldn't even make a cell phone call until 1995 that would go through. Many times you'd lose cell coverage just because of a valley hillside. And here we're going 250,000 miles away to the moon and 250,000 miles return. So it's 500,000 miles to transpond messages, to send and receive communications from the moon or to Mike Collins in the Columbia Command Module. Don't you know that the Apollo 11 Command Center was piloted by West Point alumni graduate Mike Collins, who drove the taxi whilst his two cohorts, Buzz Aldrin of West Point and Neil Armstrong of Purdue, went down to pretend to land on the moon and of course set up an American 13 striped Swiss colonial flag, right? Didn't they set up and fly a 13 striped flag, red and white, the colors of Switzerland, red and white, right? Yes, Switzerland's colors are red and white. You know, it's a white cross with a red canton, or when they use colonial vessels like the Spanish conquistadors or the English in the form of Sir Francis Drake, Switzerland uses the red cross with the white background canton. So that's got flag. They got it from Geneva, Switzerland. Okay, you still with me? All right, you believe me? You think it's real? So anyway, a lot of things going on that year. I was very busy boy. I was a paper boy. I was very busy, and I was preparing to get my first motorcycle, which didn't happen for another 18 months. Anyway, what I want to tell you is that we had the Zodiac killings going on. We had you know, we the Summer of Love was the 1967, and we had Haight-Ashbury was booming with Abigail Folger's mother, and we had Hunter S. Thompson, we had Sharon Tate's father, Paul Tate, Colonel Paul Tate, in Haight-Ashbury at the Presidio. We had Timothy Leary. We had Carlos Santana and Bill Graham. Bill Graham Presents was being rolled out by 1969. We were getting ready to have the free concert at Altamont, which Bill Graham bugged out on. He didn't appear, even though he had a lot to do with organizing it. Originally, it was to be in Golden Gate Park, and then for some reason, the venue was changed to Department of Energy property. Altamont Raceway sits atop a hillside that is owned by the Swiss Bank Authority, which is the Department of Energy, called Site 300. Site 300, it's underground facility underneath the racetrack and underneath the cows that are grazing on those hills. And today, the windmill propeller energy site, it's all part of the Department of Energy. And I seriously doubt there were more than 6 to 10,000 people there for that free concert. But the media reported 300,000 to 400,000, making it the West Coast Woodstock. That's a complete mendacity. It's totally untrue. I've raced motorcycles at the racetrack. You couldn't possibly have enough porta potties to support 400,000 people. You could barely handle 1,000 people. Okay. I never saw more than 800 people on that property in my life. All right. Be that as it will, or as it may, the Apollo 11, 11 is a Masonic number standing for completeness, perfection, and divinity. And even though we had the My Lai massacre had already happened back in March, media had concealed it for 18 months. So nobody knew anything about My Lai. Nobody knew anything about Charlie Company. Nobody knew anything about between 504 and 650 dead civilian, mostly women and children, killed by 300 plus United States Army men, 100 which belonged to Charlie Company, who's looking after to kill Charlie. Charlie Company is hunting for Charlie, aka Viet Cong, but they end up killing a bunch of women instead. All right. So what I wanted to tell you is that we'd had at least three people were killed with the Zodiac already. There were four victims and three died. And the last Zodiac killing was on 4th of July at approximately 10:30 p.m. in Vallejo, California, not far from this studio, I'll have you know. Anyway, the Apollo 11, which consists of the Columbia Command Module and the Eagle Lunar Landing Module, the the little taxi that you take down to the moon surface and land safely without crashing into the moon, like I would expect most people would crash into the moon. But they didn't. They did not crash. So it was July 16th, 1969, Apollo 11 launched into space, into the microgravity environment known as space, using a Saturn rocket. Off it went, and then it orbited the moon, and Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong waved goodbye to their cohort, Mike Collins, who remained in the Columbia Command Space Module, and they exited stage left. They're traveling a minimum of 3,500 miles an hour. That's how the average speed would be from the Earth to the moon and make a couple laps around the moon and go down and party on the moon for 2.5 hours. They walked on the moon outside of the lunar lander, the lunar landing module. They were in that lunar module for I don't know, at least 8 hours. But they left it for 2.5 hours to put up that Swiss flag and to do some other Masonic rituals upon the stage, which I'm just telling you where for practical purposes, the moon was located in San Bernardino in a hangar for the United States Air Force called Norton Air Force Base. It's a NATO base in the desert in East Los Angeles in the county of San Bernardino County, south of Victorville, if you're wondering, south of Victorville. All right, that's where the moon is. Just so if you were wondering where the moon is, it's in San Bernardino, and then just follow the signs to Norton Air Force Base, and then see if you can get through the gate, and they'll show you which warehouse they filmed the moon landing in. All right. Well, anyway, getting back to our CBS production television show hosted by Walter Cronkite. Um, you should know that the touchdown what happened on July 20th, which is about 4.5 days after they launched at 9:32 Eastern Standard Time, and they touched down, and then they had to go from 0 miles per hour to 3,500 miles an hour and rendezvous with Mike Collins, who was piloting the Columbia Command Module, and he's racing around the moon at approximately 3,500. So you have to accelerate at least to the same speed so that you don't collide and crash into Mike Collins, killing everyone, right? And then you have no chance to make the 250,000-mile journey back to Earth. Never mind that you have no heat shields on your Columbia space module. You do know that the Challenger and the Columbia space shuttles, they all came equipped with heat shields, right? Didn't we learn that? That if a few heat shields fall off, the spacecraft explodes because of the extreme. Remember we learned that in the 1980s? We learned that, I believe 1986. But I'm here to tell you that not only did Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin successfully accelerate to 3,500 miles an hour, and then you have to go a little faster or slower in order to adjust your speed to rendezvous and then link up with Mike Collins. And I'm just telling you, I don't think they could do that today in 2026. I know they can do a lot of crazy stuff, but this is 1969. It's a long time ago. I'm sure they couldn't do it then. But for purposes of CBS television, they did. Then they traveled 250,000 miles in 4 days and crashed through the atmosphere of the Earth with no heat shields and deployed three, count them three, SR-71 parachutes, which I'm telling you, there's no room to put those. And of course, juxtaposition asks the most obvious questions. Where's the porta potties? I got three men going away for 8 days with no porta potties. I don't know about you, but I'm going to find that rather difficult to step outside and use the restroom, right? Anyway, they don't have a porta potty and they're gone for 8 days, right? And their cell phones work. They deploy three parachutes. There isn't room for one parachute. I don't know what the heck they're eating for dinner. But anyway, be that as it may, they land in the North Pacific Ocean in the afternoon local time. And they're taken to the USS Hornet, which is a freighter converted into an aircraft carrier. In other words, fake. It's a fake aircraft carrier, where they're greeted by a fake president, Richard Nixon. And because of the concern about the COVID vaccine, which hadn't been produced yet, they nevertheless were concerned about moon cooties, lunar cooties, right? So they put the three astronauts into a streamlined trailer, and then they're the window for a photo op with Richard Milhouse Nixon, who, by the way, is the intelligence officer himself. So you have who is participating with Neil Armstrong, who's Navy, and two Army men, Buzz Aldrin and Mike Collins. Both graduated from West Point Academy. You know, like Timothy Leary did. Remember Timothy Leary? He went to West Point also. He was an officer cadet. In other words, he was a ring knocker. He was a student. Timothy Leary, LSD, right? Electroshock treatment, department head status of psilocybin at Harvard University. That Timothy Leary. Tune in, turn on, drop out, Timothy Leary. The pride of Harvard University. Got a PhD from UC Berkeley, Timothy Leary, right? I'm not joking around here. So you know that the Apollo 11 moon landing was a fake hoax because you see Walter Cronkite presented it. And anything that Walter Cronkite's associated with is a bald-faced lie. He bald-faced lied and told you that Lee Harvey Oswald, acting alone, killed Jack Kennedy. This is before the fake Warren Commission had been produced, but Walter Cronkite already knew the answer to the report, right? And it's also fake because in 1993, on January 14th, 1993, Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Mike Collins were awarded, bestowed, granted stars on the Hollywood Walk of Fame at Hollywood and Vine Street. Vine Street and Hollywood Boulevard. On all four corners of that intersection, you will find is a what's called a circular moon-shaped marker. It's not a traditional five-pointed pentagon star. They were awarded circular moon-shaped markers for their television category for the moon. This is the television stars of Hollywood awarded 4 stars to Mike Collins, 4 stars to Neil Armstrong, 4 stars to Buzz Aldrin in the shape of what they called a circular moon marker. Got it? So you know it's fake. Ronald Reagan, he has a star in Hollywood. He's fake. He was governor of California. He was president of the Screen Actors Guild for 7 terms, and he was the fake 2-term president of the United States of America, which doesn't exist. There is no America. There's a Swiss Hunger game that's called America. And Ronald Reagan is an actor. He's a screen actor, and he played his finest role. He should have won an Academy Award to be the fake president of the United States. Perhaps we're holding out for Donald Trump to give that award to. Donald Trump has a star on Hollywood Boulevard also. Donald Trump, he's a fake actor, right? Donald Trump is an actor. Ronald Reagan is an actor. Arnold, screw your freedom, Schwarzenegger, he's an actor. Jesse Ventura, the steroid body, he's an actor. They all were governors, okay? Arnold Schwarzenegger was a governor. Jesse Ventura was governor of Minnesota. Ronald Reagan was governor of California, right? You see a pattern here? Like if you're an actor, you can be anything, right? You can be Marlon Brando and be called the Godfather. All right. Well, anyway, I will post links below so you can acquaint yourself. The number one exhibit A that I'm going to submit as evidence that the moon landing was a hoax was um, after it was over and they safely returned to base. They went back to Houston, Texas, and on August 12th, 1969, at approximately 10 a.m., there was a press conference hosted by the NASA um, auditorium presenter. Let me pull that up for a second here. Got it here somewhere. All right. So, well, approximately 10 o'clock in the morning, they held a press conference at the Manned Spacecraft Center in Houston, Texas, around 10 a.m. It was presented by Julian Scheer, um, who was from the Public Affairs Office of the NASA um, Administration for Public Affairs. He is the assistant administrator. He was the host of a 45-minute presentation by Neil Armstrong, Mike Collins, and Edwin Buzz Aldrin Jr. It was followed by a question and answer period that ran about the same time, 45 minutes. So the grand total of 90 minutes. I'm providing you a link to a YouTube video of this post Apollo 11 moon landing question and answer and presentation by the fake astronauts. Mike Collins and Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin. This was the very first post-flight press conference after the historic fake lunar landing of July 20th, 1969. It provided the astronauts a firsthand um, account of the mission, which included lunar surface activities and challenges that they faced during the voyage. They faced no challenges whatsoever, none, because they weren't there. It never happened. They were probably in a massage parlor getting, treatments. It's all handled by Columbia Broadcasting System, which has the same name as the command module, right? They're both Columbia, evil eye, right? You have the evil left eye of Horus, right? The evil eye. So don't you get it? If you look at this 45-minute presentation by Neil Armstrong and his cohorts back in Houston, Texas on August 12th, 1969, you see any bottles of champagne. There's no dinner served. There's no meals. There's no food. There's no beer. There's no wine. There's no champagne. There's no bubbly. There's no high-fiving. There's no pouring the champagne on your cohort's head. Like, Buzz Aldrin likes to drink. So why don't you pour some champagne on his head and hand him the bottle? In fact, you're interviewing three bank robbers who haven't left town yet, and they're concerned that maybe the police might be waiting for them in the parking lot. You definitely have the impression that they're very stressed out and uncomfortable. There's no smiling, there's no high-fiving, there's no glad handing. Now, if you went to the moon, which is a 500,000 mile round trip, and you survived crashing into the Pacific Ocean, I think that you would be so happy to be alive that you wouldn't be able to stop smiling. You'd need Peter Grossman and his cosmetic surgery to get that Cheshire grin off your face, right? The Peter Grossman Cosmetic Center, aka Burn Center for Anne Heche. So I'm telling you is that the moon landing was a hoax, completely fake and fraudulent. And CBS has always been a hoax. It's about propaganda, poppycock, balderdash, and mendacity. Walter Cronkite and Dan Rotherby Bowling, they are complete COINTELPRO circus clowns to be ignored. In the way that Tucker Carlson should be ignored, Alex Jones, Joe Rogan, Stupider Peters, born on April Fool's Day 1980, Stupider Peters, with his jailhouse tattoos on both of his arms. Stu Peters to be ignored, along with Glenn Greenwald, Oliver Silverstein, Sean Silverstein, Edward Snowden, Julian Assange, all of their stupid fake moon hoax interviews involving ridiculous topics where Tucker Carlson, talked COVID with Brett Weinstein, which of course completely torpedoes Eric Weinstein. Is that anyone named Weinstein who's interviewed by Tucker Carlson will be COINTELPRO, right? If you went to Harvard, if you went to any of the 9 universities of University of California, if you went to Stanford, Yale, Princeton, and you appear in media, you are counterintelligence agent. Thank you for listening. Do like and share my videos because you won't be surprised to know that my channel is heavily shadow banned. Take care now. Bye-bye.